So we are blessed because I think we have the altitude, we have the perfect climate to cultivate almost everything. We have very, very fertile soils. So basically, we are in an environment where it is more or less a little bit easy. Don't get me wrong, farming is not easy, but in a way, we have all the different things that you need to cultivate in a good way.
I wonder if you've heard of that saying that when populations go into a middle-class economy, the first thing they're going to get are French fries or potatoes. Now, that is why we have Mark Dieleman, the founder of Dieleman Potatoes, on the podcast today, because this podcast is about achieving a middle-class economy. So how do we find the things that fuel the wheels of Uganda's economy to get us there in that thriving middle class? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to another episode of the podcast on Uganda. Today's segment is the segment on sectors, and aren't we in luck? We had the Potato Man patriots for the longest time ever. We've been talking about the Potato Man. Today we brought the Potato Man to talk about himself fully and the work he does in Uganda. Welcome to the podcast, Mark Dieleman of Dieleman Potatoes.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling very well, yeah, thank you very much.
Okay, so there is statistics about Uganda being the third potato producing country after Kenya and Rwanda. And here you are selling seed potatoes in Uganda. But I want to know from your ethos, what solution were you solving with Dieleman Potatoes?
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, Dieleman Potatoes believes that we can provide a farmer better input. And we normally act in a way that if you have garbage in, you can only expect garbage out. If you put good seeds inside of your soil, if you grow it with good crop protection, if you fertilize it with the right products, then you can get a lovely product here in Uganda, in the Pearl of Africa. So Dieleman Potatoes contributes to that, not only with high quality seed potatoes, but also with advice, with guidance, and with knowledge.
And you have had the opportunity to travel African countries, extending services to farmers and sharing the knowledge about potato farming in particular. Now, for millennia, we've had our own way of planting potatoes, and here you come with your special seeds saying that, okay, we need to plant our potatoes in a row, and this is how it should be. Given your experience going to the different regions of potatoes in Uganda, what would you say have been the changes you have noticed, especially in potato farming?
Yeah. So I'm from the Netherlands, so we don't talk about Irish potatoes, but we talk about Dutch potatoes. I'm a farmer's son, so my dad is a potato farmer himself, so I grew up with potatoes. But we also need to be honest. If you look back in the history, also from the Netherlands, nowadays we are producing the highest yield per acre. But back in the days, that was not true.
Sorry, are you producing the highest yield in the world as the Netherlands? Or?
Well, there are always people better, of course, but if you look on average, then I know quite sure that we are able to produce the highest yields in the world on a hectare. And that is a bit related to, if you look at the total world map, you don't find the Netherlands, though the Netherlands is the 18th biggest economy in the world. Though we are very small, we as farmers are challenged always with other industries, with urbanization. So we need to fight for every square meter that is in the Netherlands. It is important to realize that. If you look at Egypt is having very less water. So every drip of sweet water that they can use, they use it very efficient. If you go back to the Netherlands, we spray in the summer on places where you are allowed to spray. We spray in the hot sun. It doesn't matter because water, especially the area where my parents are coming from, 4 meters below sea level, especially that area, if we don't pump out the water, we drown. So water there is not a problem. I think we learned from the Netherlands with a lot lot of research, with a lot of technology, with a lot of trial and error to become one of the best in the world with yields per acre.
So how
If you relate that back to East Africa, because that was your question, we are here blessed. And sometimes a blessing is also a disadvantage. Allow me to say some words about that. So we are blessed because I think we have the altitude, we have the perfect climate to cultivate almost everything. We have very, very fertile soils. So basically, we are in an environment where it is more or less a little bit easy. Don't get me wrong, farming is not easy, but in a way, we have all the different things that you need to cultivate in a good way. It makes us also a bit relaxed because if we eat an apple, for example, and we throw it in the soil and we give it a little bit of water, half a year later there is an apple plant, an apple tree developing.
True, and you know
which
that.
is not completely true, of course, but it's good to understand that we have a lot of things here in Uganda that others don't have. And that is a big advantage, and we need to take that advantage. Unfortunately, we see that farmers are challenged here a bit. So farmers here are normally smallholder farmers, that's still 5 acres. That's the majority here of the farmers that cultivate. And those people are challenged by funding. Those people are challenged by family that wants money from them. Those people are challenged by a lot of things. I believe that from 5 acres, you can't earn a decent living. That is my belief. People don't have to agree with me. So if you want to earn a little bit of money, then at least you try to get a cash crop. Well, we are very lucky that potato is one of the cash crops. So there is a huge opportunity, though we see a low yield per acre, and I relate that due to inputs. So it starts with a very old generation of the seed potato that they are using. Perhaps it's good to spend some words on seed and normal potatoes. So if we talk about seed potatoes, it's not an actual seed. It is a tuber. But the tuber of an early generation. Seed is more or less what you plant. So we plant tubers to get more tubers. If you plant 1 tuber, if you have a local variety, you get 3-4 tubers back. If you get a tuber from us, you get 12, 13, sometimes even 16 tubers back. So that is already a big advantage of our young certified seed potato. So the seed potato is just a potato like we know. From outside you don't see anything, but it is an early generation.
Thank you. Let's hold that thought. Mark here is telling us about the low yields, meaning if the farmers are not producing enough potatoes for them to be able to take their children to school, for them to be able to afford medicine, we're not able to achieve that middle class economy. Now, why do you think we have the low yields?
Yeah, so that is even related to your first question. I make a little bit a long story of it, but we here are challenging ourselves with wrong techniques. So we use an old generation potato to plant. So what farmers normally do here in Uganda, especially smallholder farmers, is they harvest their potatoes, they look at the most beautiful ones, they sell to the middleman, and they keep the small potatoes, they keep the cracked ones, they keep the ones that they can't sell, which is understandable. But if you want to accelerate, if you want to be successful, you need to start, accordingly to us, with the best input possible. There it starts already. Then secondly, a potato, like human beings, it is not without a reason that countries don't allow families to multiply within families. A bit an awkward explanation perhaps, but a good one to understand. Okay, Adam and Eva, as the Bible is telling us, started, but later on we created families, and different families multiply with each other to make sure that you don't get inconveniences in the babies you get. For potatoes, it works exactly the same. So the more you multiply, the lower the quality. So we try to keep it as fresh as possible, But also, if you cultivate potatoes after potatoes after potatoes after potatoes because it is a cash crop, we need to realize that our soil can't handle. If you walk a marathon or if you run a marathon, you can't run directly the next day another and the next day another and the next day another. Of course, that's good for your bank account, but your body can't do it. For a potato, it's the same. So for the potato, it is important that the soil has rest, that you feed the soil again with lettuce, with all that kind of things, that you build your organic matter again, and then succeed with a nice yield of potatoes. So crop rotation, as we call it, is a very key thing that we forget sometimes, or most of the times, here in Uganda, which gives you a high strength of our biggest disease, Phytophthora, is very resistant for most of the inputs that we spray on the potatoes. So we need to vary our input and we need to make it happen that there is more inputs available for farmers. For example, that is a third part of the lack of high yields. Yeah. And then lastly, you need to make sure that also with post-harvest, with storage, you don't lose what you already collected.
We'll delve into that a bit more. But I think for the patriot who is now watching, listening, they're probably thinking, what are we talking about? Potatoes, crop rotation?
Yes.
Now they're in their, I don't know where they are now, probably they're in Bushenyi just chilling and thinking, I have a bit of land.
Yes.
And Mark here just said that Uganda has all these opportunities of fertile soils and rainfall and all these amazing things about Uganda. Now, can they grow their potatoes in Bushenyi? Can potatoes grow anywhere?
Yeah, so accordingly to my belief, as long as you have soil, sunlight and water, everything is possible. Though it is not as easy as I mentioned it, of course. Coming back to your question, why would potatoes contribute to achieve a middle-class economy? At the moment, we see that farming is not really an interesting business. Coffee farming at the moment, but it also fluctuated. There was also a time when coffee didn't contribute so much. Now the prices are very high, but it was also low sometimes. So that is agricultural business. We are dealing with an off-taker that more or less determine the price, the supply and demand. So at the end, if we look at Africa, and especially East Africa, has a huge opportunity in feeding the rest of Africa. If you look at the western part of Africa, it's very dry, very hot, and a lot of salty water. Where you can't easily cultivate a potato, there are living a lot of people. We do now a lot of export. Why are we not exporting from Uganda? Driving it to the people that need it. So I believe that if we upscale our production, there is a huge opportunity. You see it also, and that is a bit the chicken and the egg story, which one came first. For us, what we normally see is that 95-97% of our total market of potatoes is informal markets. So it is not taken by a processor. So that
listening.
Yes, so
they're in Bushenyi. Can they plant in Bushenyi?
Yes, they can plant in Bushenyi, but not without good supervision. So if you want to accelerate, if you want to become the best, you need to put a lot of effort in it. So a potato is not a tree. A potato is in that way a vegetable. So you need to put a lot of attention to it. And then it is very good possible to harvest a high yield. Then the prices can be lower and the revenue can be higher, which is a bit feeling contradicting. But if your yield is higher, the average price of a kilogram of potato here is higher than in the Netherlands. Though we say we are here a third world country. So my dad is able to produce potatoes cheaper than here in Uganda, where you have more land, where you have more availability of water, where you have a beautiful sun, where you have the altitude to have less pressure of specific diseases. So we need to upscale. We need to upscale and feed Africa. There are enough people. The demand is big enough. But then we also need to process it.
We talked about altitude. Can we talk about those areas? Because now you're telling the patriot who is in Bushenyi that they can plant these potatoes. But Are there those areas, like you say, with the altitude that are more favorable for potato farming as opposed to the others in Uganda?
Yeah, well, if you talk about consumption potatoes, so the potatoes that we process, that we eat, that we consume, if you have water availability, for example, with drip irrigation, I believe that you can cultivate everywhere. Only that on sandy soils, you need to add a bit more fertilizer because it flushes away with the hard rain that we can have here in Uganda. In general, I think you can cultivate it everywhere. Altitude is mainly relevant for virus, for a fly that sucks a bit out of a diseased potato plant and brings it to the next one, like malaria is. So for malaria, 99% of the time you don't get malaria. You are bitten by a mosquito, you don't get malaria, but you need to scratch. For a potato, that is the same. If that aphid is sucking out of one healthy plant and take the next one, that is not a very big problem, but otherwise you spread virus. So if it sucks a diseased plant, the next one will also be diseased. If you use that diseased plant the season after for planting again, then you plant a diseased potato. That is related to virus. Late blight, Phytophthora is number one disease. Here in Uganda, that is a bit the tricky part of cultivating in Bushengi or wherever you are with land. Here we have such a favorable climate, not only for cultivated potatoes, but also for the number one disease. So the number one disease, Phytophthora late blight, is spreading very easily on wet, hot climates. And here we can have a lot of humidity, especially with the dew in the morning, for example. If your leaves are not drying quick enough, then it can spread very easily, especially with wind. So you need to protect your crop a lot, and I mentioned it earlier. I think there is really an opportunity for Uganda to introduce more bigger range of crop protection that can help the farmer to protect his crop. Not only mancozeb, which is hugely available, it is so important to vary a bit, to switch a bit in different crop protection because the pressure here is so high. Yeah.
Okay. And clearly you've traveled the whole of Africa, had some consultancies in Rwanda, Kenya, which I've had the privilege to travel with all over, at least East Africa. You talked about the poor yields and the abundance of what we have in terms of resources, but then we are still not producing as much as we should, like you rightly said, in the Netherlands, yet we have better opportunities here. So in your opinion, what are the challenges then for the farmer? Does the farmer have that many options?
Yeah, it's a good question, but the answer is a bit complicated to mention. So I think there are a lot of steps in, especially if you look in potato farming, that are needed. So I think if you want to upscale, you need to mechanize a bit. So make sure that your soil is really loose and not only by hand, but also making sure that it is loose in a way that the land is deeply loose and ready for planting. I think you need to use better inputs, like, for example, our certified seed potatoes. So I cooperate with Agrico. Agrico is having a very big farm in Nakuru in Kenya, where they multiply on large scale with big tractors, with specialized people, with spraying machines, with the good inputs, with good storage facilities. And so they do everything in their way to cultivate good seed potatoes, not to cultivate good consumption potatoes. And those two things are completely different, which we not always get fully here in Uganda. So I believe that with very good inputs, you already have of early generation tubers, that you can automatically already push. So if you use an old car to Fort Portal, the chance that you reach is less than when you use a new car to Fort Portal, with good suspensions, with good tires, with a full tank and whatsoever. So see our seed potatoes as that new car that can drive fast, that can drive reliable, that can drive far and efficient. So you have mechanization, good inputs, then good crop protection, like I mentioned, and specialization. So we really need to understand that potato farming is not for fun. It is not a fun business. It's a very serious business. So it is for us very important to really make sure that we take it as serious as it is. So we visit our field every day. We check on all the available things. That we really are on top of creating the best input possible. We also need a little bit help of our governments that can make it possible. And I think Uganda is already on the good track. They find it important. You see that there is effort. But we are not there yet, which is not a blame or a shame. But we need to constantly keep on pushing on the good things. Good inputs, mechanization, storage facilities, better knowledge, training. Go to the farmer, help him again and again, and not only show once, no, show related to the season. Make sure that we are spraying in a serious way, that we don't use a knapsack, but that we are trying to upscale a bit. Because if we use a knapsack, we pump and we get tired, we have half a spray, we spray 2 plants, we forget one, or we spray 2 times 1 plant. We need to be serious. This is a serious farming. And if we do serious farming, then we can earn a lot of money if we upscale.
I feel like Mark is speaking to a lot of patriots. Some Ugandans actually go into farming because they have a bit of money, but then they'll be checking up on their farms on WhatsApp and on the phone, not physically being there, like you rightly say, that we should give it time and we should be there the whole time. And I like that you also alluded to government being very supportive. However, I feel like they probably don't rightly say it, but when we were in school, we studied about food security, and they would mention especially seeds that are being multiplied as GMOs. For example, the Monsanto seed company. Why would you encourage then government to continue opening up the market for such seeds?
I think government bodies are very important to push. So I go back to the beginning of our conversation. I'm coming from the Netherlands, and I mentioned we weren't always the best farmers. Around 90-20, 90-30, 30 farmers were the same as in Uganda at the moment. So we had a lot of small-scale farmers. We had 85% of all the people were agricultural related. Now it is only 8 or 9%, I don't know the exact figure, but we really upscaled, and we couldn't upscale without the government. So the government is having a couple of very important tasks. One, making sure that you protect who already entered. So if I registered my variety, I expect that the Ugandan government is protecting me and not others, because I followed the rule, I registered my variety, and so I expect that if someone else wants to import Marquise potato varieties, that the government will block it, because they say Dieleman Potatoes, that is the one that is officially certified to do it.
Or they're protecting the local varieties.
Yeah, fine. But if you see by research done by themselves, not by me, done by themselves, that reports show that new varieties with better resistance, with higher yields, with better characteristics are performing better, why would you focus on your own varieties if something better is available?
To give the farmers
So
more options.
as a government, I think you are not in place to decide for your fellow people that are living in Uganda, the farmers here in this case. No, don't decide for your farmers. The farmers can decide themselves, because they have an off-take market. They will cultivate for the demand. So as a Ugandan government, you don't have to say this is a good variety, that is a bad variety. Market will determine. But I can imagine that you want to have a selection process to protect who is already registered and to make sure that not GMOs are coming in, that the variety is really performing in your climate, that it is better yielding, as me, the commercial person, is saying. But as soon as you do that, so you need to make policies how to enter Uganda, you need to create an environment where you can secured do those things, and that the government is then also doing what they say they do, register and free the varieties. Secondly, I think you need to make sure that there is enough input. So not only varieties of potatoes, but that you with Makerere University or other universities do a lot of research on, okay, in our climate, how are the potatoes performing? What kind of crop protection do we need to succeed? There is a big task for the Makerere University, and the government can facilitate. That is not only good for the doctors and the students in Makerere University, that contributes to your nation, because you get better inputs, so you get better results, so you can export at the end better or feed your own people with your own produce instead of importing. Thirdly, I think you have a big role as a government in training and guiding farmers. So of course, I want farmers, that are my clients, so I need to guide them and see them. But there is also a big task, accordingly to me, for government to help and assist farmers that are deep in the village, with sharing knowledge, with explaining and giving them the opportunity. Because if they succeed, they will grow, they will earn more money, they will contribute more to URA. If you want to do it seriously, I think with rules and regulations you protect, but you also stimulate. So don't be afraid to make sometimes a mistake, but make sure that the environment is created for other people to enter and to create a bit of competition. Competition is no problem, because at the end, market will adapt. In the Netherlands, registering a variety is very easy. It's very clear. And they have more than 300 registered potato varieties. 300. Here we have 12, 13. So why are we not selecting from those 300 the best performing varieties? Why is the Ugandan government not saying, and this is not a blame, this is just a suggestion, why is the Ugandan government not saying to the Dutch embassy, but you have 300 varieties. Let us do together with the Makerere University, with NARO, with MAIF, some trials to see from those 300 varieties, are there not more varieties that we can also use here to have better inputs? We as the Netherlands are exporting to 85 countries in the world. So do you really think that we don't know what varieties to send?
They would rather develop their own, reinvent the wheel.
We take 15 years. The commercial companies, 15 years investment to find a new variety. Every year again, they plant 200,000 crossings. And then here in Uganda, we are going to say, those people in the Netherlands with the highest yields, they don't understand it. We do it ourselves. Yeah. And that is not a blame, but I'm only trying to say, guys, wake up. Take this opportunity. You want to achieve a middle-class economy. Why are you doing it in your dark room? Cooperate. Make clear what your rules and regulations are, but make it easy. Make it easy to enter. Then we can earn together and not alone. Why would we do it alone? It is proven that with one container of tubers, so here they are a bit afraid of tubers, we do it to 85 countries. So we are only spreading diseases worldwide? No, of course not. Of course not. We have the best NARO over there, and we find it important. Why would we send rubbish if we want to do business? Me, I am married with a beautiful Ugandan. I want to leave this country in 2 years when I filled my pocket? No, of course not.
Well, you're one in a million.
Beg your pardon?
You're one in a million. There's so many people who have different interests.
But if you have good rules and regulations in place, there is no problem. We cooperate. We look around. We are part of COMESA. So we already agreed on paper that if it goes well in Kenya, why wouldn't we copy and paste in Uganda?
It needs to work for Ugandan's environment. But I understand your point.
Yes.
For the Patriot, I think who is wondering, you talked about the yields being low. We've had conversations around the potatoes we eat here in the franchise restaurants coming from South Africa, coming from Kenya, which doesn't make sense given our fertile soils, given all the opportunities we have here in Uganda. Now, practically, how can we increase those yields practically from smallholder farmers to large-scale farmers like we see in Kenya, everywhere else?
So like I tried to mention already before, the Netherlands didn't grow in a year. They didn't grow in 2 years. In Uganda, we are growing. Don't get me wrong. Only that we see a decrease in yields. That was the same in 1930 in the Netherlands.
Practical steps. How do we?
So we need to say we need serious farmers. And if we say we need serious farmers, I mean serious farmers. So the farmers that are better performing than others. And we need to stimulate them that they can grow with microfinance, with machinery, with better inputs. Of course, they need to buy Maquis potato variety. We are here not without a reason. So they need to buy good inputs, thinking of school fees or whatever. That are problems that are very understandable. But we need that next level, because we are easily to double our school fees or triple our school fees if we have better inputs. Only you need to start. And if you start and you have ×2 yield, then you are laughing. But you need to start with a more expensive input, with more expensive crop protection, with more expensive fertilizers. But if you make a good mix, then you can really accelerate. And so small steps is learn from others. Don't be afraid to copy, to listen to other successes, to spy. Better to spy than make rubbish yourself.
I wouldn't say copy. I would say take lessons.
Take lessons, yes. Of course, no, I'm joking a bit, but in a way I'm very serious. Kenya is a bit a step up front. So let's learn from it. It are our neighbors. It are our brothers and sisters. So if we look over there, we introduced better agricultural methods. So if you look at Kenya, you see better agricultural methods. We need to learn from it. We need to adopt that same. We need to cultivate potato in ridges. That is not because a stupid Dutch man is saying. No, because research found out it is the most efficient. It's the most efficient way forward. And of course we can have flooding, so we can have water, we can dig a big ditch around it or whatsoever. Of course we need to take notice of the environment where we cultivate in, but with simple steps, with a serious space distance between potatoes. Now we throw it on feeling, but research is there. We know that we need to plant them 30 centimeters out of each other. We know that a ridge most optimal is 75 centimeters out of each other. Why not adopt? Because then we have a field full of high-performing potatoes. And that is at the end what we want. So if you plant them too close together, they can never develop. They don't have enough space. If you plant them too far out of each other, you could have had a higher yield per acre. So let us adopt. Let us make sure that we learn from each other. Let's have a government that stimulates that corporations share knowledge, share information with each other, visit the fields with our extension services to make sure that we make a success out of this. And it is very easily possible. It's very easily possible. And farming is not easily, that is not honest. Farming is challenging. We never know when rain is there. We are not always able to buy all our crop protection up front. But we need to look at the long term. Accordingly to me, and people don't have to agree, but accordingly to me, we in our big cars with our beautiful money can't also live from 1 million a quarter. So we need to upscale the revenue of a farmer so that the farmers become more serious because they are able, because they have funds. So we need to upscale. We need to say to bad performing farmers, you did a good job, thank you for that. Now your neighbor is taking over because he is making better yield. And you can work for him or you can go to the urban.
People own their lands. So how do you tell someone to leave their land?
At the end, my belief is that if we can show that it is really okay, land is available here, I am not afraid that we can't find land. It will come automatically. Once we have better varieties, better performing, we have now in Bale, they are building a beautiful processing facility with pearl chips. We have already Sums that is producing here in Uganda very nice crisps. So we have processors already. They will have demand more and more, but not demand of rubbish. They have demand of high quality, serious, produced potatoes. And then they will pay a premium. I know that for sure.
Yeah.
But even the premium you don't need if you have already a higher yield.
Yeah. Speaking of premium, you talked about our sisters and brothers in Kenya, but I feel like the East African countries have a fight to peak. The Kenyans every now and then chase away our milk, they ban our maize. We do the same for some products. For potatoes, I feel like a lot of the conversations have been around nematodes, but
Yes.
you think they're nematodes.
There is no other possibility. If we cultivate potatoes and potatoes and potatoes, automatically you create an environment where, for example, nematodes, but also the string of Phytophthora will thank you very much. So it will be there. So it is affecting our yields. But we want to achieve a middle-class economy in 2030 or 2035, or I don't care. And if we want that, we need to become serious. There are a lot of Africans on the continent. They all need food. And if we can increase, we can battle easily maize, we can battle easily rice, because we produce higher yields per acre with less water. So at the end, if we want to be serious, then we need Kenya, then we need Tanzania, then we need Rwanda, then we need South Sudan, then we need the Congo. There is no problem. There is no fight at all. That is short-term battles, which are always there. I understand that. But if we look at the horizon, if we look at what we want to achieve, come on, guys, there is market enough. There's market enough. That is not a problem. We only need to become more and more serious. We need to upscale our production and really put people with knowledge on the right places.
Yeah. I still feel like that patriot who is in Bushenyi doesn't have a proper answer. But what are the potato cultivating regions in Uganda?
Yeah, so basically at the moment we are mainly producing in Kapchorwa, Fort Portal, Kisoro and Kabale. Then we do also a bit in central Uganda, but that is basically under irrigation, otherwise it's not so easy.
Yeah.
But the biggest potato areas are, of course, like I mentioned.
Okay. And then the other areas people can cultivate, but we don't expect the success that those other potato areas.
Well, which is not fully true. We have a nice colleague in the Arua area.
No?
That's the highland where it is much drier. So they are challenged a bit more with water availability. But yeah, like I mentioned, if we become serious, recently I was at Makerere University with Dr. Okello, and he also mentioned that Makerere University did a lot of research, which is actually very, very nice. I was very happy with that conversation, but said that, yeah, what we see here in Uganda is that the light intensity is so high that we basically are cutting the throat of the potato plant. So he can't adapt a lot when the sun is so high, but every plant is having a cooling mechanism as long as you give it water. So in areas where we are challenged with not enough water, rainfall, then we need to do irrigation, and preferably drip irrigation. So we don't wetten our leaves, but we wetten the soil so the internal plant can cool itself, and you can get fantastic results. It's really lovely. So that is the reason why I said those people in Bushenyi, of course they can cultivate. Honestly believe that. But it is not like buying a bag of high quality inputs from Mark Dieleman because he has that lovely marquise and I'm going to accelerate. No, that is only the start of your journey. That's only the start of your race. That's only the start of your challenge, so to say. That is the pistol that shoots you off. But if you run on naked feet, you can never win a person that is on very nice sport shoes.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just about it, dear patriots. You've had the man himself, Mark, who has grown up on a farm. He's traveled extensively within East Africa, within Africa, as a consultant on potato farming. And here he is today to share with us his insights so you can use this knowledge for your garden, for your farm, just so you can contribute also to the middle class economy. Now we have our very last question we ask every guest that comes onto this podcast. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, Mark Dieleman, what do you think it's going to take for Uganda to achieve a middle class economy? You already alluded to so many things. in this conversation, but to simply put it, what do you think it will really take?
It would take a continuously enthusiasm that the Ugandan inhabitants already have so much that I truly admire, and courage to do it, to challenge yourself, to not think, I have something else to do. No, that you first visit your field, do then something else. But related to potato farming, I think government has an important role to release new opportunities, to make it happen, to not be afraid, but open your doors for new opportunities, and for the farmer to really become serious and understand that they have a very important role in our total economy, that they feed us. So we can't perform if we don't have a variety of available products. And if we do that together, if we are open for collaboration, if we are open for new opportunities, then we are going to make it.
Wonderful. Well, you had the man himself. If anybody is watching now and they want to follow up on whatever you said, where should they find you?
Yeah, I happily am quite visible. So we are on all the social media platforms. Find us on Dieleman Potatoes, and they can even find us on the web. As soon as in your search browser you type in Dieleman Potatoes Uganda, I know for sure that you directly reach my number. It's always on. Perhaps I'm not always taking, but you can always send a text. You can send us an email, and we are open for the discussion. We are open for your challenge, and we are open for your battle, and we are happy to do it hand in hand. Thank you very much.
So we have the rapid fire questions. So you give us the first things that come off your mind, 3 things that will help us achieve that thriving middle class economy, and 3 things we need to stop doing, or the things that will not take us to a middle class economy. So whatever comes into your mind. So what are the 3 things that will help us achieve that middle class economy?
Open our country for better inputs, push on mechanization, and establish good research center with training the farmers.
So what are those things we have currently that will not get us to the middle class economy?
Stop being afraid of importing tubers. Stop being afraid. So open your economy for new opportunities like importing tubers instead of in vitro plants. Making sure that you facilitate better systems so that corruption is more complicated. Then the last one is, what shall we pick point? Stop eating all those layers of the road. They are eating the layers of the road, so the total layer is low.
Well, thank you so much for sparing this afternoon to come and have a chat with us. And we hope that you're also there to achieve that middle class economy with us.
Thank you very much. Thanks for hosting us.
You're welcome. Let's take a moment to appreciate our partners of the podcast today. As you can realize, we are taking things a notch higher. So we really appreciate the Tribe Africa for producing this beautiful episode, and we look forward to more episodes to come.